There was a man named Daniel who had a habit he never talked about. Every night after everyone else went to sleep, he would lie in bed and replay the day. One conversation, one mistake, music, one unanswered message, one look on someone's face. And somehow by midnight, music, a completely ordinary day, had become evidence that his entire life was falling apart. Music one night. He sent an email to his manager. Nothing unusual, music, just a normal question about a project. He went to sleep. The next morning, there was still no reply. By 9 a.m., Daniel thought his manager was disappointed music in him. By noon, he was convinced he had made a serious mistake. By evening, music Hismond had already created a future where he lost his job, couldn't pay his bills, disappointed his music family, and eventually had to start his life all over again. Then his phone buzzed. One message. His manager had been traveling. The email was never even seen until that afternoon. And Daniel realized something music that disturbed him. The worst part of his day had never actually happened. His mind music had created it and he had believed it. Maybe you've experienced something similar. Maybe not with a job. Maybe with a relationship, your health, your finances, your future. A conversation that didn't go the way you wanted. A mistake you music can't stop replaying. A future you keep imagining going wrong. And here's the dangerous part about negative music thinking. It doesn't always sound negative. Sometimes music, it sounds intelligent. I'm just being realistic. I'm preparing myself. I'm thinking ahead. I just want to understand what happened. But there is a difference between thinking about a problem and mentally living inside it. The ancient Stoics understood this difference, I think. They knew that life would always contain uncertainty, disappointment, rejection, loss, pressure, and change. They didn't try to build a life where nothing went wrong. And they built a mind that could remain steady when something did. And today we're going to Tao's 8 Stoic rules to do exactly music that, not to pretend negative thoughts don't exist, but to stop allowing them to control the direction of your life because your mind doesn't need more noise. It needs training. 1. Question the story, not just the thought. Imagine you receive a text from someone you care music about. You respond. They don't answer. That's the fact. But then your mind begins writing the story. They're upset with me. I said something music wrong. Maybe they don't respect me anymore. Maybe I've lost them. Notice what happened. Music, the event was small. The story became enormous. This is one of the most important Stoic lessons. An event music and your interpretation of that event are not the same thing. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to look at things as they actually are rather than immediately attaching emotional judgments to them. So music. The next time your mind gives you a negative explanation, pause. Ask, what do I actually know? Then ask, what am music I assuming? Those two questions can completely change the way you experience life. You may discover that the situation isn't nearly as bad as the music story your mind created. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to turn an assumption into a fact. 2. Return to what you can control. A few years ago, imagine someone sitting in their car before an important job interview. They're nervous. Their music thinking about the interviewer, the questions, the competition, whether the company will choose them, music whether someone else has a better resume. Their heart is racing. But here's the strange thing. Almost everything they're worrying about is outside their control. They can't control who gets selected. They can't control the interviewer's personality. They can't control what another candidate music says, but they can control one thing, how they walk into that room. That's music, the Stoic distinction. Your effort is yours. Your preparation is yours. Music, your attitude is yours. Your response is yours. But people's opinions, music not completely yours. The past gone, the future uncertain. Other people's behavior never fully yours. So when negative thinking begins, ask music one question. Is there something I can actually do about this right now? If the answer is yes, do it. Music. If the answer is no, stop paying the emotional price for something you cannot control. That's not weakness, that's discipline. 3. Music. Stop suffering through imaginary futures. Here's where negative thinking becomes especially powerful. Your mind music can create an entire disaster without a single thing happening. You imagine the conversation, you imagine the rejection. Music, you imagine the failure. You imagine what people will say. You imagine how you'll feel. And then you experience the emotion as if the event has already happened. Music, but it hasn't. You're borrowing pain from a future that may never arrive. The Stoics did think about difficult possibilities, but they didn't use imagination as a music excuse for endless anxiety. They used it to prepare. There's a huge difference. Preparation asks, if this happens, what will I do? Overthinking asks, what if this happens? And then this happens, and then this happens. One produces action, the other produces exhaustion. So the next time your mind begins building a music disaster, tell yourself, if the problem arrives, I'll deal with the problem. Until then, music I'll deal with today. You don't have to live through tomorrow's problems, music tonight. 4. Never turn a bad day into a bad identity. This is where many people music quietly destroy their confidence. They make one mistake and say, I'm terrible music at this. They experience rejection and say, nobody wants me. They fail at something and say, I'll never succeed. Be careful with those words because there's a massive difference between I fail it and music, I am a failure. One describes an event, the other, music, attacks your identity. A Stoic doesn't deny mistakes. A Stoic studies them. What happened? Why did it happen? What can I learn? What will I do differently next time? Music, that's strength. You don't need to pretend you never fail. You need to stop allowing failure to define the person you're becoming. Music, your worst moment is not your permanent identity. Your past can explain you, but it does not have to command you. But there's where this gets deeper because maybe you're thinking, I music understand all of this, but I've tried to stop negative thinking before. You treat positive thoughts. You told yourself to relax. Music, you distracted yourself. You watched motivational videos and yet the thoughts came back. Music, there's a reason. You cannot always defeat negative thinking by fighting it. Sometimes music fighting the thought gives it even more attention. The Stoics approached the problem differently. They trained themselves to change their relationship with the thought. And that's where music, the next 4 rules become extremely important. 5. Don't fight music every thought. Picture yourself standing beside a river. Leaves are floating music downstream. You see one, then another, then another. You don't jump into the river to stop every leaf. You let them pass. Your thoughts can be treated music the same way. A negative thought appears. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to prove it wrong for music 30 minutes. You can simply notice it. I'm having the thought that something will music go wrong. Then return to what you're doing. This creates something powerful. Distance. You are no longer inside the thought. You are observing music it. And once you can observe a thought without automatically obeying it, you've music taken back a piece of your freedom. 6. Turn obstacles into training. Imagine 2 people losing the same opportunity. One says, why does this always happen to me? The other says, what can I learn from this? Same music event, different response, different future. This is one of the deepest ideas in Stoicism. An obstacle can become a training ground. A difficult person can train your patience. A setback can train your resilience. A period of uncertainty can train your ability to remain music calm. A mistake can train your judgment. This doesn't mean you have to call every painful experience good. It means you're fused to music, let pain become meaningless. Ask yourself, what qualities is this situation asking me to develop? Maybe patience, maybe music courage, maybe discipline, maybe acceptance, maybe self-respect. The moment you ask that question, you stop being only a victim of the situation. You become music, a student of it. And that's a powerful change. 7. Stop arguing with reality. Think about how much mental energy is hidden inside one sentence. This shouldn't be happening, but it is happening. You can hate it. You can dislike it. You can wish it were different. But reality doesn't negotiate with music your preferences. If someone leaves your life, arguing with reality won't bring them back. If you made a mistake yesterday, wishing it hadn't happened won't rewrite the day. If plans change, anger won't make time move backward. Acceptance doesn't mean saying I music love this. It means saying this is where I am, now what? That's a much stronger question. Not why isn't life music giving me what I want? But given the reality in front of me, what is the wisest music thing I can do next? That question moves you forward. 8. Protect your mind like your life depends on it. Your mind becomes shaped by what you repeatedly expose it to. Think about what you consume every day. The conversations, the headlines, music, the arguments, the social media, the comparisons, the music opinions. The people constantly telling you what is wrong with the world. You cannot spend hours feeding your mind chaos music, and then wonder why your inner world feels chaotic. The Stoics understood the importance of directing attention, so become selective. You don't music need to respond to every opinion. You don't need to participate in every argument. You don't need to know everything everyone is saying about you. And you certainly don't need to give every person unlimited access to your peace. Ask yourself, is this making me wiser, stronger, or calmer? If not, maybe you music don't need more of it. Sometimes protecting your peace isn't about adding another habit. It's about removing unnecessary noise. Now come back to Daniel. Remember him? The man lying awake at night creating problems that didn't music exist. One evening, the same thing happened again. He sent a message, no response. How was it? His mind immediately began creating a story, but this time Daniel stopped. He took a breath and instead music of asking, why aren't they responding? He asked, what do I actually know? The answer was simple, nothing. So he put the phone down, he went back to what he music was doing. The next morning, their response came. Nothing was wrong. And Daniel music realized something important. His life hadn't changed overnight. His relationship music with his thoughts had. That's what you're really trying to build. Not a mind that never thinks music negatively. That's impossible. You are human. Your mind will sometimes worry. It will sometimes doubt. It will sometimes imagine the worst. The goal music is not to become emotionless. The goal is to become uncontrolled by your emotions. When anger music arrives, you don't have to become anger. When fear arrives, you don't have to obey fear. When doubt arrives music, you don't have to make decisions from doubt. When a negative thought appears, you don't have to turn it into a belief. You can pause. You can observe. Music you can choose. And that choice is where your power lives. So tonight, before you go to sleep, think about the thoughts you've been carrying. Which ones are facts? Music, which ones are assumptions? Which ones belong to the past? Which ones belong to a future that hasn't happened? And which ones are actually within your control? Then let some of them go. Not music because they don't matter, but because you matter more than the thoughts that are trying to consume you. You don't need to solve your entire life tonight, music. You don't need to know exactly what tomorrow will bring. You don't need everyone's approval. Music, you don't need certainty before taking the next step. You need a clear mind, a steady music character, and the courage to handle reality one moment at a time. Remember this. Your first thought may not be your choice, but your second thought can be, music, your reaction can be, your next action can be. And when you repeat that choice day after day, something begins to change. The world may remain unpredictable. Music. People may still disappoint you. Plans may still fail. Life may still surprise you, but you become harder to disturb. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. That is their old Stoic victory. Not controlling everything around music you. Not eliminating every negative thought, but reaching the point where your mind can say, music, I see the thought. I understand the fear, but I still choose what happens next. And when you can do that, you are no longer simply reacting to life. You are living it on your own music terms.